Hi, it's Jennifer Evans with Empowering Wellness Counseling Solutions, and this week we are all about perceived realities. So we've been talking about our negative energy and how to manifest positive energy, and how our energy actually creates vibrations inside of us that really affects how we interact with others. And today we're going to talk about archetypes. So what is our perspective archetype? What is it and that means like how are we engaging with the world? And that perspective is the lens that comes on before anything else. And if we go into the science of it or the neurology of it, is that the amygdala in the temporal lobe, our primitive brain, is actually kind of coming in for survival mode. So it's as an effort to survive. We can't have any shame or blame on the experiences of how our body wants to naturally react. Instead, we want to find awareness, acceptance, and action that this is the process. And that way we can rebuild, because of neuroplasticity, we can rebuild our receptors to be in a more action-oriented state. But the lens that comes on is what we call implicit memory. There's no recall. It is just the way it is. Like you sit down at a table and you pick up a fork and spoon because that's just what you do. Like it's ingrained in you. You've seen it 1,000 times. You just know what to do with it. And that is implicit memory. And that is why we have certain archetypes, 4 core archetypes, that will create a lens for our perspective. And those 4 archetypes are the observer, the reactor, the analyzer, and the intuitive. And so amongst those is the observer is somebody who's going to sit back and just kind of watch the situation. The reactor is somebody who's going to quickly kind of come in and want to be the advocate, want to be the fighter. They're going to kind of come in and want to do something very, very quickly and be very connected to their behaviors and their emotions in that moment. The analyzer is the ruminator, right? The anxious mind. They're kind of sitting there wondering kind of all the different things of what could happen and how to have a response to it. And the intuitive is somebody who just kind of wants to sit and feel in that moment. They're not going to be really action oriented. They're more of like the creative. They want the sense of adventure. And they just kind of want to be present in that moment. And so how we understand what our dominant factor is and what our archetype is one, you could go into the video description and there's a quiz to find out what your archetype is. So real easy. Or, personal reflection and journaling is so important when we're trying to grow and we're trying to find success. And so documenting your experiences and having awareness and self-awareness especially is really important for you to be able to find success. And I have a little graphic on winning the inner game, and it starts with emotional regulation. And we're about to release next week. We should be releasing our latest book, which is Key Steps to Live a Happier and Healthier Life, Part 2. And it's all about emotional regulation. And that is step 1 in the winning the inner game. Part 1 of Key Steps to Live a Happier and Healthier Life is actually kind of section 2. However, I find that, through a marketing standpoint, we kind of want to know what our framework of success is. So for those who feel like they've kind of got things going, then they can start with the prefrontal lobe, the executive function, building leadership qualities, and building a framework of success. And then start realizing kind of what why they don't have $1 million and six-pack abs. And then it helps them to find that realization, and it motivates them to go to emotional regulation, because there's such a stigma around emotional regulation. It's really hard for people to kind of buy in and say, this is for me. I feel like I do a pretty good job. And the reality is that we all can improve. Because of the implicit memory, we can all improve. And so this kind of buys you in of, here's a framework of success. And then it helps you to realize that there are things missing if you're still on your success journey. And we should be on our success journey for their entire life. And this really amplifies that. And some people need to start emotional regulation. Others, which is part 3, need to start in interpersonal skills. And so we regulate our emotions, we find our leadership qualities, and we maximize on our leadership ability. It gives us self-awareness. It allows us to really reflect without any kind of judgment. And then that allows us to really increase our social IQ, our EQ, being able to interact with others in the most effective manner. And then that will help us to then better regulate, because we're not so reactionary with people. We can be more grounded and maximize on stress situations. And then that leads us back to more leadership modes. So that is kind of how we're identifying, is we're finding self-awareness. We are journaling. We are connecting back to what is it that we are doing and how are we feeling? What are our sensations? When are we getting those tight fists and those shoulders up into our ears? And when we see what that is, then we can lean into it, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. And then it'll help us to naturally release it. Because these are implicit and quick reactions, what we're trying to do, the more awareness we build, the more that we can be aware, the more that we choose what lens we want to put on. And so between like an observer and a reactor, what we're looking at is somebody who is kind of in almost like a freeze mode versus someone in a fight mode. So freeze versus fight, right? And they're good in each. And if you find yourself in a dynamic, a relationship, or an interaction between two people where one is a freezer and one is a fighter, you see that one finds the other. It's kind of like moth to a flame. But it means that, it's important to understand, because what we do is as we're in, one person's in freeze mode, the other person wants to be in fight mode even more. And that makes this person want to freeze more. And so if we're leaning into that relationship, then what we want to do is the freeze person needs to find some faith, some opposite of faith is fear, not doubt. Opposite of faith is fear, not doubt. Fear creates doubt, because fear creates avoidance, and avoidance turns into long-term anxiety growth and long-term lack of capacity, doubt. And so the person who is in freeze mode is fear, avoidant, doubt. And when we have doubt, and the trust feedback loop says that we start to kind of cycle inwardly, which is meaning that we are not available to the other person. And as we cycle inwardly, they're getting more and more fearful, and they want to attack more and more on the fight mode or the reactor mode. And they're losing trust in themselves, and they're losing trust in their partner. And so eventually they stop attacking the partner, they stop reacting to the partner, and they start reacting to the world. And then this person starts to get anxious. And so there's a lot of lack of trust, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of doubt that is happening in these relationships between an observer and a reactor. And so it's important to lean in and let go of some of that fear and just sit with the discomfort, be present, will help both find a better interaction together. And an interaction with themselves will be better. Just find your presence. The fighter, calm down, take some of that freeze mentality. The freezer, the observer, take some of that reactor mentality. Find the shades of gray, because these are obviously two dichotomies, and that's an anxious state. For the analyzer and the intuitive, it's right brain versus left brain, right? It is logic versus feeling. And so again, the logic is going to want to shut down and run the numbers. The feeler is going to want to be really a part of the experience and fully engulfed in the sensation. And so what we want to do is, again, find the shades of gray. The analyzer needs to find connection to the feelings, because what happens with an analyzer is they fear emotion and they rely on logic. But when you fear emotion, you are in an emotionally dysregulated state. Having no emotion is just as dysregulated as having too much emotion. So you're still in this emotionally dysregulated state. You're stuck in this emotional brain. Your implicit memory wants to take over, and all it knows how to do is to analyze and to intellectualize the situation. But there's fear there. And when there's fear, you're back in the emotional brain, and your emotional brain wants to take over. But you say, I can't go to the emotional brain. Bad things happen when I go in the emotional brain. And then what we start doing is, usually the analyzer, when we look at the transactional analysis, the parent ego, child ego, adult ego state, they're usually taking on a more adult ego state, where the intuitor is taking on a child ego state. So whoever starts at first, it does not matter. You are triangulated. And what happens when we are triangulated? Everybody loses. And so it doesn't matter who got there first. It matters that you realize you are triangulated, whether you're being implicitly asked for it or you put yourself there because it was a survival instinct. And what you want to do is ground, find a mindful place, ground, find your present, and find your neutrality to get out of that triangulation. You do that through the analyzer finding some emotional connection and just leaning into that. Emotion is not a bad thing, and you don't get in trouble when you have emotions. And that's a very common thing that happens, and it's a very common implicit memory that we have, is that emotion equals bad equals trouble. And then for the intuitor, to find some prefrontal cortex, find some kind of valid data point to ground to, so that you're not out there feeling everything, but that you're grounded in a rational state. And how do we break these patterns? Because again, it's intuitive. This is what we're doing for survival. Our brain thinks of danger, 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 Will Robinson, I must come in and help you. So what we have to do is keep rewiring the brain. We do the box breathing. We do those Power 15. The Power 15 is a great infographic to have. You can go into, when you go to my video description and go to my blog link, you'll see the Power of 15. Scroll down a little bit. That infographic gives you 9 things that you can do, and whether it's 5-minute, 30-second, 1-minute increments, but it will help you to calm down and find a grounded moment so that you understand, again, when am I going to put these lenses on? Then I need to ground before that so I have a better chance of using the lens that I want to, right? I love photography. I love nature photography. There are times where I will have my landscape lens. So I don't want a lot of variation. I just want a nice big overall picture. I've got a good little lens for that, right? And then I have the big lens. I love my big lens because I love getting up close with the animals. I'm not going to go bird watching with my landscape lens because I'm going to put myself in a position where I'm not going to be successful. I'm going to be really angry and I'm just going to be frustrated. I'm going to have all this negative energy because I didn't come in successful. I'd rather have my bird watching lens on and switch it to a landscape lens than have a landscape lens on and then find a bird and I can't take that image and I'm not ready for it. And the same with my settings. I want to set my setting for success so that I have a chance of getting a good picture. Because there's nothing worse than having an amazing opportunity to have a good shot and you can't get it. It's blurry or it's over or underexposed. And that's what we're trying to do when we have our lenses, when we have these archetypes. Awareness, acceptance. This is just the way it is. It's not good. It's not bad. It's not evil. It's not sainthood. It's just the way it is. It's how every brain works in an effort to survive. And when we can accept that, then we can say, this is how I'm going to come into this situation. And so I don't use it as an excuse. I don't say everybody needs to calm down because I'm going to be emotionally reactive. That is not the game. It's saying I'm going to be emotionally reactive, so I want to be a little bit better. I want to be more mindful. I had this really toxic boss when I was a little baby counselor, one of my first jobs. And she was a raging psychopath. I mean, truly, like multiple lawsuits and litigations against the company because of wrongful termination, because of this reactionary thing that somebody came in and threatened her. So therefore they had to make somebody's life hell, pretty much is what happened. And then those people would get fired, and then they would come back and say, you actually couldn't fire them. Like, sorry, you need to control your emotions, person. You can't fire them. So truly a true narcissist. But when I got on the radar, my mentors told me, these little tricks so that I could be more intentional and more mindful. And so my grandmother had these beautiful little costume jewelry brooches that had, I don't know, it wasn't really a rhinestone. It was probably crystals or glass, but it shined and it sparkled and it made me feel special. And so when I knew that I had to interact with her, I knew I was going to cry. I'm 20-something years old with poor emotional regulation. Of course I'm going to cry. I don't know what to do with these. I was told emotions were bad as a kid. What are you going to do? And the second I hear disappointment, like the tears start rolling, and I am not a crier. But what it did is it allowed me to have an intentional space for me. So when I would put my brooch on, I had these cute little, they were just really shiny. It was a really, really shiny necklace. Now it was my grandmother, so it's like 60 years old. I really don't want to wear it. It's probably older than that. I really don't want to wear it anymore just because of the emotional value it has for me. But it was just these really sparkly, clear necklace. I had 3 necklaces, and so that was my guard, that was my vortex. When I wore that, I knew that I had all this good energy coming out around me, and it helped me to block the negative energy that I knew was coming in. And that is the lens. It's understanding on times where you may be a little less skilled, you may be a little immature, and that's okay, because as you do these things to intentfully engage and put up your exercises, you're doing the exercises, you're building your strength, you are becoming more confident, you're becoming more capable, and you're going to be able to excel in these high stress moments. And then these high stress moments won't feel so stressful anymore. So that is the point, is finding awareness so that you can have acceptance and you can have action. And saying goodbye to bad brain gives you literally 60 pages of action steps, of things to do, to connect with, of stories of how my clients have been through this and what they've done to get out of it and what we've done together so that they can implement ways to think in a different way and to react in a different way. Saying goodbye to bad brain, the link will be in the video description. And so how we achieve mental clarity is we want to build a framework. We want to know exactly what we're walking into so that it's predictable. It lessens anxiety. Predictability gives us less anxiety. And so the mental clarity framework is that mindfulness is building intentions. What do you want out of this? You know it's a distressing situation. What value are you gaining from this? Do you want to build strength? Do you want to find meaning out of this? Do you want to just survive it? Do you want to pretend like it never happened? What do you want? Set an intention of how you're gaining value out of this experience. Mindfully get your toolbox together. You don't go into a DIY project like the first thing they have is materials, right? Why do they have that? So you can be successful. Because you're not going to watch a video and then it doesn't tell you what to do and you're like, well, this was stupid. You want your materials there. So if you have nails and you want a hammer, you know, if you have screws, you want a screwdriver. You want to make sure it's the right screwdriver. You want to have your tools available. So you set an intention. This is what I want to do. I want to repaint my kitchen, right? That's what I want to do. In one world, in the emotional world, I want to be able to come out untraumatized. I want to have an interaction with this narcissist boss without crying, and without feeling like my job is on the line and I am negatively spiraling, that everything is catastrophized. I want to come out with some kind of balanced mindset and not have an emotional reaction. Okay? If I'm going to paint my kitchen, I'm going to have my paint, I'm going to have my paintbrush, my drop cloths, my tape. I'm going to have, this is the list. If I'm coming into a meeting with my narcissist, I have my bling, something that's going to help prepare me. I'm going to have my box breathing. So as she is talking at me and being very, very defensive and angry, I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to box breathe. I'm going to imagine my box. I'm going to go in and out. I'm going to draw and trace my box. I have my jewels. I have, my 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I have a statement because I'm not going to go in there without a statement. So why did she call me in there? What is it that I need to achieve in this? So I'm going to have clear data points that I want to engage in so that I don't feel defensive and I don't have anything to say and then I just sit there in more fear. I want as much information as I possibly can. I want my water so that I can take time and I can have a strategic break. I can take water, strategically catch my breath, and come back to one of those data points. So that is the toolkit. That is a framework for success in a highly emotive environment. And it goes back to any kind of home improvements. The same thing. You have your toolbox. So don't underestimate that toolbox and don't underestimate what you put in that toolbox. There is nothing that is ridiculous to be in that toolbox. If you have a stuffed animal that you've had for the rest of, your entire life and it still gives you joy and you want to hug on it and you're going to come back to it, then hide it in your office or put it on your chair. Whatever you want to do. There's nothing that is too ridiculous to put in there. And there's no goal that is too low when it comes to success oriented. I'm telling you, people were walking around their couches in the middle of the pandemic because that was their success goal. And there is nothing too small. Just getting up off the couch is a big win. And then when we have this, we have an activation, action state activation mode. And what that means is that we, again, are moving into prefrontal. And so 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 2 is 4, 3 + 3 is 6, something that is immediately allows us to jog into the prefrontal. Valid data points is another way to go into this action state activation. These are the steps that I'm outlining. These are the things that I'm doing. So what we're trying to do is go away from our dominant pattern archetype and lean into the opposite. So if we are an observer, we're putting on some fight mode. We're getting ourselves big. Ted Lasso, right? When her actual name I think is Hannah. When her character goes, Rebecca, the character Rebecca, goes into, and she's this powerful woman, and she grows herself up, and she pulls herself out. So observer, get that lion out of you. If you are the lion, you're the fighter, you are the reactor, then find some observance, zoom out a little bit. Find a way to zoom out and look at the landscape. You don't need the telephoto lens. You need the landscape lens. If you are the analyzer and you've got your numbers and you are head down, like, where are the numbers? What are all the plans? Zoom out a little bit. Find the intuitive. Find your sensations. Do a body scan. Get that. Every time I say a body scan, I move those shoulders because I do keep a lot of tension in my shoulders. My goodness. I keep a lot there. So do the body scan. Find where your tension is and just release it a little bit. Just release it. Feel. Don't think, feel. And if you are the intuitor, try to find some data points, some valid data points to lean into. Keep them on the forefront. Have your steps in front of you so that you know exactly what you want to do, so you're not so reactionary, you're not so feeling, but that you have a plan and that you can follow. That's what I have for you today. Please go and hit the little thumbs up, get notifications, subscribe, and learn more. There's so many things that we're going through. We are going through my Key Steps book. Next week, we're going to be looking at distress tolerance. So there's a lot of good things in dialectical behavior therapy, a lot of great acronyms to keep us at the top of our game and really in the moment when stress wants to have us hold back. So hit subscribe so you can get all of that great content. And I am Jennifer Evans with Empowering Wellness. Thank you so much.